All right, we just saw SGA win his first well-deserved and possibly first of many MVP award this season. He edged out Nikola Jokic and Giannis Antetokounmpo for the win. Well-deserved again. I really don't have much dispute to him getting it. I think too many things played into his favor this year. For one, you had the fact that he's the best player, putting up ridiculous numbers on the best team in the NBA. But there was this part that kind of went overlooked just a little bit, not by everybody, but by some. The fact that this team was the best team in the NBA pretty much from start to finish. Obviously, they had some competition with Cleveland, but the fact that they played at that high of a level while being the youngest team in basketball was unbelievable, right? And it's something that we're not going to see again in a very, very long time outside of this particular group. So again, just so many team narratives playing into this as well. And there's also a bit of voter fatigue that you can talk about. Obviously, with Jokic, I think if he'd have won this year, this would have been his fourth. Does that mean he wasn't deserving of some MVP recognition? No, right? This is one of the best seasons we've gotten from Nikola Jokic, but voter fatigue always plays a factor. And on top of that, this was just a really weird season for Denver. While Jokic was great individually, I just didn't think he had the narrative in his favor quite like SGA. So shout out to SGA. Amazing performance throughout the season. He's brought it here in the playoffs as well. And he has gotten them a step further than where they were in the postseason last year by getting them to the Western Conference Finals. There's nothing better to see from a young team than seeing this constant progression year in and year out. They start off in the play-in tournament, then they follow up with a second round appearance, and they follow up with a Western Conference Finals appearance this season. I wanted to talk about this as well because this was actually texted to me a bit earlier and I was reminded about it. Just revisiting that trade that sent SGA over to OKC in the first place. And we all remember, right? It was a massive deal between the Clippers and the Thunder, where the Thunder were able to get SGA and a ton of draft picks, and in exchange, the Clippers were able to receive Paul George. And now the conversation is that this trade is the worst NBA trade of all time. And I can understand why some people would think that, right? If you look at the player that SGA turned into, if you look at the team that OKC turned into as a result of this trade, right? Being this really good performing team while still having amazing draft capital in the vault, and contrast that to where the Clippers have been, where they have had some solid looking squads over the years, but just were never able to get over the hump. If you're looking at all of that, I can understand why you think this trade was bad. But I really want to make this distinction. There is a difference between a trade not aging well and a trade being bad from the get-go. So I don't think this trade aged well, right? There's no disputing that at all. But does that mean the trade at that particular point in time didn't make sense? No. I thought that trade, when it happened, made a lot of sense. You have to remember, right? Like around the time this trade had happened, Paul George was coming off of an MVP caliber season. This was not some broken down version of Paul George that the Clippers went for. This was Paul George at his arguable peak, right? And what else did they do that off season? They also brought over Kawhi Leonard, who at that particular point in time was arguably the best player in the league, just won a championship, his second of his career, and won his second finals MVP. What they were investing in was something serious. You were pairing along two of some of the best wings in the NBA, along with a lot of other really good role players. Lou Williams was on that team, Patrick Beverley, Montrezl Harrell. That was a stacked team. And in the West, it made sense to try to have a really stacked roster because look what they were just coming off of, right? They just came off of the Golden State Warriors dynasty, where again, you have this really stacked roster with Kevin Durant, Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. So the perception for a lot of teams was if we can pack together multiple all-star or superstar level players, right, who can fit together to some degree, we can win. That was the blueprint. After seeing Golden State dominate for years, that became the blueprint for a lot of teams, particularly out West. Now, did that within itself age well? No, because what we saw a lot of times was the idea of building a super team was not sustainable. But at that time, it made sense because teams and front offices saw the way Golden State did it. So it made sense to try to mold themselves after that just a bit. So at the point in time that it happened, that trade between OKC and the Clippers on the part for the Clippers Clippers made a ton of sense. It made sense to invest in pairing alongside those two players. Like, it's not a crazy decision every single time for a team to choose to win immediately or make an attempt to win immediately and bypass rebuilding, right? Like, I know sometimes the teams that go the rebuilding path end up seeing success down the road, but we can't blame teams for looking to just avoid that altogether and try to make the choice to win immediately, right? And to go for those star players instead of trying to build up through the draft and take X amount of years to get to a level of dominance, right? Like, let's go back and look at the Lakers. The Lakers decided to move away from rebuilding and taking X amount of years to try to build up a really good young core. And they decided to move away from that and try to win immediately. And it worked, right? Immediately it worked. They were able to win a championship in 2020 after giving up guys like Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball and a ton of other really good young players. Now, ultimately, that didn't age well for the Lakers. And I would argue for majority of it, right, the reason behind that was because the front office just made a lot of questionable fit decisions here and there that could have been avoided altogether. But there is some success and some evidence of success for teams to kind of move away from looking to rebuild and choosing to win immediately. That's not a bad idea each and every single time. I know we look at examples like OKC, right, and even Denver, where they developed guys like Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. I know we look at those situations and they end up panning out well, but again, that doesn't mean every single time around it is a bad idea for a team to choose to win immediately. If there's an opportunity to go trade for Paul George in his prime, a lot of teams are going to take it, even if that means moving away a bunch of really good draft picks that could end up benefiting you down the road. Why get mad at a team for choosing to pair up one of the best players in basketball with another one of the best players in basketball, both in their prime? So again, in hindsight, it's easy to say that trade was not a good trade, right? But if we're looking at it in the moment, it made a ton of sense for the Clippers organization to choose that path. And look, they could have made it work, right? There were some opportunities for the Clippers to actually win a championship out of that, right? So a lot of it wasn't just bad front office stuff. I thought generally the front office did a good job in building up a team. A lot of it just came down to the players not performing. Like that first season where they were in the bubble after getting Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, they just didn't play well in the bubble, right? That's not an indictment on the front office. I thought the front office did an amazing job at setting this team up for success. So again, in the moment, trade made a ton of sense. Looking back at it, no, it did not age well. But again, something not aging well does not mean that the decision at the time was not a good decision. I still think, looking back, if I was a GM, I'm not having too much of an issue giving up a ton of draft picks to pair along prime Paul George with prime Kawhi Leonard. But obviously, OKC got the last laugh, and here they are now in the West Finals with a good chance at getting to the NBA Finals for the first time since 2012. So we'll see what ends up happening, but just wanted to get my thoughts on that. Congrats to SGA and what he was able to do, and hopefully this Clippers franchise can find a way to rebuild, and maybe that does look like making that decision to rebuild and try to win through the draft and develop talent over the years and try to go in a different direction than what they did back in 2019.